Now you're defeating the purpose of the transmission. You're not allowing it to fully engage. It's creating all kinds of slipping and heat inside, and that's where you're going to relieve the pressure in the event of excess heating within the transmission. The fact of the matter is, with age, with use, the deterioration sets in of that transmission fluid. Life's too short to drive boring cars. Modern day cars, there's basically 3 different major transmissions. You get automatic transmissions, as you find in these vehicles and probably 80% of the vehicles on the road. Then there's CVT, continuously variable transmissions, and then there's the good old-fashioned manual transmission. Don't do these 5 things to your automatic transmission. You'll guaranteed to ruin your car if you do. Let's get into it now. So the first tip that's guaranteed to extend the life of your transmission, and if you fail to do that, you might risk it, because after all, transmissions can cost $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 depending on the type of brand you're talking about. But a lot of times, here we have a dipstick. We're talking about a lot of vehicles have an actual dipstick like this. You can check the fluid of your transmission, you can check the quality of it, you can check the level of it, and there's a procedure in doing that. If you look right there, you can actually see there's level indicators on that dipstick. However, with that said, there's lots of vehicles that say they have sealed units and that you never need to change the transmission fluid in the life of that vehicle. That's total nonsense. There's no magic silver bullet here. There's no magic button. There's nothing new in the way of technology that these manufacturers all of a sudden found something out that nobody else knew about 10 years before. The fact of the matter is, with age, with use, the deterioration sets in of that transmission fluid. Old, tired transmission fluid is essentially a guaranteed recipe for a quick failure. As a matter of fact, the more contaminants you get in the transmission fluid, the more likely you're about to see a failure. Moisture, dirt, debris, even though it's not necessarily introduced, it's wear and tear within that starts to result in earlier deterioration. As you add wear and tear, age, miles, it just breaks down. They say it's good for the life of the vehicle, but the reality is, if you never change the fluid on that car or truck, there's a good chance that you might actually end up having to replace a transmission way before a reasonable amount of miles. As a matter of fact, in most cases, 60, 70, 80, or 90,000 miles would be a great place to start thinking about getting that transmission fluid changed. Just gotta find the right shop, make sure they have a good procedure, and that would always be a surefire way to ensure the longevity of your transmission. So the second point that you have to consider about making sure your transmission isn't going to croak early is the vent. And the vent is there to relieve pressure. I mean, transmissions, as they heat up, they're under load, they're under work, they start to get hot internally. When they create heat, there's an expansion. The expansion needs somewhere to relieve the pressure. It's called a vent. And those vents are typically on top of the transmission. Now, they're generally designed to relieve pressure out, and they generally reduce the possibility of bringing external contaminants inside. But that's in a perfect world. It doesn't always work that way. So there is a way that you can introduce contaminants into your transmission, resulting in early failure, and that's essentially the vent, or driving your vehicle underwater, maybe going under an overpass where all of a sudden there's been floodwaters and you have your vehicle driving it in deeper water is a surefire way of causing earlier failure. Here, I'll show you what a vent looks like. And right down there, you have that little black cap. That there is your vent, and that's where you're going to relieve the pressure in the event of excess heating within the transmission. So that is a guaranteed way, because what you don't want to have is water getting into your oil. Remember, it operates like hydraulics, and you put a water or air into a hydraulic system, you're guaranteed to have an early onset of failure. Forget about the contaminants that might be in that water. The fact of the matter is just getting water in there and hydraulic fluid just do not mix. And the third thing that's guaranteed to not only deteriorate your transmission over time, but potentially blow it up completely while you're driving down the road is driving. You're driving, you've got it in D, and then you go and switch it into reverse. If the vehicle is actually moving, when you toggle it in the opposite direction, that's a surefire way to blow up your transmission. The same almost always applies for the same direction. If you're moving too quickly backwards as you're backing out a parking lot and you jam it and drive and try to accelerate before the vehicle's at a complete stop, there's a good chance you might wreck your transmission doing that as well. That's a common phenomenon that I see a lot of people do. That's why when you back out, you're changing gears, make sure you're completely stopped. And that's another problem. Just you're waiting for long lights, or maybe you're waiting to pick somebody up, they're picking up a kid from school, whatever that is. If the vehicle's sitting for too long in drive, that's leading to torque converter failure too. That adds heat to the torque converter, and that potentially adds deterioration to that torque converter. And so as a result, if you're going to be sitting for more than a minute or two, I would advise you, first of all, put it in park, and if it goes much even beyond that, throw it in park and turn the vehicle off altogether if you're sitting there waiting for an extended period of time. Now, if it's minus 30 and it's really cold out, yeah, it's nice to have the vehicle sitting there running, but again, at least at the very minimum, throw it either in neutral in a park brake or throw it in park, and that way it minimizes the wear on the torque converter and the transmission. So that's the next thing you don't want to do is a brake stand or hard burnouts with your automatic transmission. Guaranteed way to prematurely fail your transmission, especially a brake stand, because what you're doing is you're holding the brake on and you're giving it a bunch of power. Now you're defeating the purpose of the transmission. You're not allowing it to fully engage. It's creating all kinds of slipping and heat inside and potentially leading to either a catastrophic failure, or you might add or possibly take away 100,000 kilometers off the life of that transmission. And with all of that said, I'm sure that's going to help you prevent any further damage to the automatic transmissions that you may have in your car. Right there, you're going to want to check that out because there's a list of some of the worst transmissions on the market today. You're definitely going to want to avoid those if you want to avoid some headaches. Hope to see you real soon. Catch you then. Bye-bye.